Hello and welcome to our masterclass today, and I'm really delighted that we're doing it on Google, Gemini and NotebookLM because I've been using it for quite a few years, it seems like. I was using Bard before that as well. So I love both of the programs, and what you're going to be learning today is how to use them as a school leader. So that's what the whole session is about, and I'm really delighted to have Simon and Daniel here who are going to go through the whole system and really fine-tune it to work out what you can use it for, school leader. And they've got so many tips and hints and ways to use it, which is going to be a great delight. So welcome, Simon and Daniel.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you, Jonathan. Hello.
It's basically, I'm going to hand it over to you now to tell us everything you need to know about Google and NotebookLM and Gemini. So it should be, I'm really looking forward to this.
Thanks, Jonathan. Yes, as Jonathan said, welcome everyone. We're excited to bring you this Leading with AI, Gemini, and NotebookLM for Education Leaders session. A big thank you to Head Teacher Chat, Jonathan, and others, the whole team, for inviting us. And of course, a big thank you also to our friends in the background, Canopy, for helping organize this and coordinate this. And a massive thank you to Daniel Bull, who's joining us here. Daniel, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Daniel Bull. I'm from Lee Academies Trust. So we are a multi-academy trust in the southeast of England. I'll explain more about the trust in a moment, but my role, I'm Head of Learning Technologies. So really looking at how we adopt technologies in the classroom and to improve our systems in our academies.
Brilliant. Thank you, Daniel. And for those who don't know me, my name is Simon Fasolo. I lead on Google Workspace for Education and Gemini across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And what I really do is work really closely with a lot of our customers and a lot of our teams to make sure that you're having the best experience possible. And we're excited to be here today just to be able to speak to you. So thank you so much for giving up your time this lovely, lovely afternoon. So today's session is going to focus on a few main areas. So basically, we're going to be including demos of Google's generative AI capabilities. We're going to look at the personalization of learning with tools like NotebookLM and GEMS, and we're going to close off with Q&A. I'll start with kind of looking at this slide here. So as education leaders, I'm sure these three pillars will really resonate with you. We understand you're looking for ways to streamline workflows, save time, improve staff efficiency, and the ability to deliver high quality learning, of course. And I'm sure many of you know as well, generative AI is a massive enabler of improving learner outcomes through personalized learning and helping educators save time. So before we go any further, I think it will be really useful for you all just to hear a little bit more about what that actually looks like in the real world by moving over to Daniel to share about how Gemini is transforming the Academies Trust. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you. So yeah, a bit of context about our multi-academy trust. We are a group of 33 academies in the southeast. We're a complete mix of secondary, primary, and special needs as well. And we've been really AI positive since the beginning, really, or since was it November 2022 with the launch of ChatGPT. And we have always been looking at how we can use AI tools, but obviously having some caution, but trying to be really positive, be on the front foot. We've been looking at different tools throughout this time as a set of Google schools. What we've tried to do is focus on the use of Google AI where possible, because that integrates nicely with what we're doing. And in particular, over the past probably about 9 months now, we've been having a specific focus on the operational efficiencies in our head office staff, looking at the Gemini Advanced license, and then kind of moving that out to senior leaders within schools as well. In the past, probably about 3 months, we've been doing that now. So as you can imagine, what we're trying to do is make sure that we're using the right tools. And I think if you go on to the next slide, you get a very wise quote from someone talking about how it's really our emphasis about putting the appropriate tools, the right tools in people's hands, because there are so many AI tools out there, and it's hard sometimes to see the wood through the trees, so to speak. And so part of my role is to look at how we're researching those tools, and then seeing how we can make them impactful in the classroom. And what really this does is build on our whole digital strategy, looking at where we can innovate, how we can improve efficiencies, how we can improve education through the use of any digital tool, in which obviously AI is one of those as well. Every year we do a digital survey, and in this year, obviously, we had a key focus on AI, and these are some of the results that we actually got from our teachers. Because what we're looking at is how do actually people feel about AI, because you realize some people have engaged very well with AI, some people have not. Some people, their understanding of AI is still based on sci-fi movies and not the actual reality of what we have in front of us. But it was really interesting that when we're looking at our scores, in a sense that these are out of 10, we're seeing that overall there's good positivity. We're seeing that there's an improvement, but also this is linked with training. Interestingly, with our support staff and our TAs, at the time of the survey, they had a lower percentage of being trained, and that reflected in their confidence levels and the impact. And so I think one of the things we're particularly looking at is when we're rolling out anything, it's also about that really strong onboarding, including the training. And I think when we are training people effectively on AI, we're seeing really positive impact on that as well. So I don't know if we're back to Simon now.
Well, yeah, no, thanks for sharing, Daniel. I wish I'd come up with my own quote. That was a nice touch. But really interesting to see the link with training as well. It makes a lot of sense. I think that's a really important point. The tools alone are wonderful, but without the training, without the understanding of how to use them, not as useful for sure. So let's break down leadership in the AI era. I like to share this quote, which is not mine, but I actually thought this was quite worth sharing, because if you look at the date, this large statement was made in this year, a few months ago, by the CEO of Alphabet and Google, Sundar Pichai, who's saying, we're still in the early days. I already believe AI will be the most profound shift of our lifetimes. Big statement. Bigger than the shift of personal commuting or to mobile, and it would do more to democratize access to information than the internet. So I think the reason I'm sharing this is I think it's easy to rush past just how large of a moment this is that we find ourselves in, especially in education. And I would actually impress upon you that the decisions you make around AI and how you apply the technology to your education community has and will have a large impact, a massive impact. And that's why at Google, we really do take a bold and responsible approach to AI, which we'll cover in a little bit more detail as we get through the presentation, as we share like how we actually have thought about the rollout of these tools. But I just thought that the way that Google takes a bold and responsible approach to AI couldn't be more relevant to education leaders like yourselves as well. With that thought in mind, I just want to level set around generative AI in general by sharing these 5 things to know, just kind of like a really nice, easy level set. Number 1, AI is a machine learning model. So think of AI less of a person. A lot of people tend to think, oh, it's so intuitive, it feels like I'm talking to a person. You're not. Think of it more like a super smart pattern finder. It can give you incredibly creative outputs, but it's working off data. It's not working off feelings or independent thought. It's brilliant at what it does, but it's still a machine. Number 2, use AI to assist and inspire. So imagine having a really powerful assistant that can help you with the tedious things in your role. And we know, right, there's so much admin, there's so much burden in education. How do we help you free up all of that so you can focus on what you do best? That could never be replaced by a machine or by a digital tool. And that's really where AI comes in. It's not about replacing, it's about making more time, making way for teachers and education and experts to do what they do best. So it's a great tool for brainstorming, planning, streamlining your workflows, letting you jumpstart those creative ideas. Third point, AI can and will make mistakes. Yes, I'm going on record to say that we just have to be real and honest about it, that AI is still learning. It's not perfect. And occasionally you might get a response that's a little bit off. So you really want to think of it as a collaboration, or you might need to tweak your questions or your prompts to guide it in the right direction. And kind of flowing on from that point, the third point to the third point, critically evaluating responses is extremely relevant. So always remember to double check AI generated information. You can do that with our tools to double check with Google search, especially if the information is presented as factual. So fact checking is so important. And that's important to be passing on those digital skills as well to our education communities. So you want to treat it like any other source and verify it. And if you spot something inaccurate, there are ways to give feedback within the tools, and please do that. The feedback really helps. It makes it better for everyone. And finally, generative AI will evolve. It's a rapidly changing field. The quote before was alluding to the fact that we've really just begun. I'm thinking of Karen Carpenter, you've only just begun. I was almost thinking about singing the opening line, but I'll refrain. What we have only just begun, and we are committed to developing this technology responsibly. And with that in mind, I really want to call out this important slide here. So when your education community and your end users access Gemini or NotebookLM offerings within their Google for Education accounts, they do so with added data protections in place. In fact, Gemini and NotebookLM are covered under your Google Workspace for Education terms of service as core services, giving you enterprise-grade data protection. So that was a little bit of a journey. Started with adding added data protections to keep our users safe, but we've got to the stage now where they are now fully fledged core services, so that you can use them with full confidence, just like you would use Classroom or Gmail, Docs, Slides, Sheets, and the rest with your Google for Education account. So it means that when you're using Gemini, the data is not reviewed by anyone. It's not used to train AI models, and it's all governed by those existing data processing terms that you have with Google Workspace for Education. Really quite different to other offerings on the market. So safe and secure. And now I'm just going to discuss a few reasons of why Google, why Gemini. And I think just a couple of points. Like, one is compliance. Kind of leading on from my last slide again, like Gemini really does lead in compliance. We're dedicated to maintaining strict compliance, especially given the diverse needs of our customers across sectors. So of course we service education, but we're also working with governments, aerospace, healthcare, globally. So you can rest assured you're having the safest, most compliant AI experience with Gemini. Just to zoom out for a moment, I think it's worth kind of calling out that we're offering the experience across the breadth of education as well. So Google Workspace for Education is used by 170 million plus users globally in education. When we think about higher education, 90% of the top 20 universities globally using Workspace for Education. 96% of Forbes' next 1 billion startups are using Workspace, and more than 3 billion users out there from a consumer and commercial and just in general perspective are using Workspace for Education. And I mention this not to say, Workspace is kind of a big deal, or this is a big deal. It's more to say, like, there's a large footprint. We have to be extremely responsible, and we recognize that we have a lot of users in education that are also going to the workplace, and we're covering them across their journey. A very important key differentiator for us at Google is LearnLM. So it'd be interesting to hear later if anyone on the watching this presentation is already familiar with LearnLM. We announced this back in May. Basically, LearnLM is a new family of models fine-tuned for learning, and they're grounded in educational research and learning science principles. So really, at Google, we are a learning company as well. By the way, if you think about Google, greater Google, we were very interested in how do we infuse these tools with the very best learning experience possible. And really, that's what LearnLM is all about. So these fine-tuned learning models were that we've worked on by actually collaborating with education experts from all over the world and associations from all over the world and universities and education institutions to really kind of dig into what are the key principles and how do we bring those key pedagogical principles into the tools and actually learn them now. It's like it infuses Gemini, and there's actually benefit to the rest of Google, even outside of education, with the experience that brings to our products. So when we're building products now in Gemini, they're built with these great learning pedagogical benefits as well. And I'll touch a little bit more on that later on. Maybe I'll just go back for a second and mention something, because one way to think about this is the importance of it, because I realize I just went past it, but I'll come back for a second and say this. If you think about it, when you're using generative AI or use a chat experience, I'll ask this question: is it helpful to ask a question, put a prompt in, and get an answer back? And you might respond with, yeah, well, somewhat, and I'll ask a follow-up question: is it necessarily a great learning experience? To which you might think, well, not necessarily, and not always. And so really, we recognize that it's so important to make sure that when we're developing these tools, it's not just about getting an answer back, quick answer back, right? It's not just a calculator approach to learning. Learning, we need to think about all the different facets of learning, from reducing cognitive load to prompting deeper personalized learning to deepening the metacognition, right? How do we give people information in a learning flow and at the right time and in the right amount as well, just to name a few. And you'll see that show up in the tools. Okay, now I'll move ahead. So a high-level view of our offerings, our AI offerings in education is really what this slide is about. And I feel this is important. I'll let this soak in, because quite often we talk about these tools and these experiences, but it can be a little bit confusing about where they live and what it's all about, right? What does Google really offer with our AI experience in education? So starting with our no-cost options on the left, we have the Gemini app. So this is our foundational AI chat experience. You can go to it now at gemini.google.com. It's free for education users. It provides a user-friendly chat interface for information retrieval, brainstorming, general assistance. It's actually available globally in over 40 languages and for all ages. And I might just double down on that last point, because it's very recently that we announced that this is now available for all ages in education. There's a little bit more information we have on that. I will mention now that administrators and education institutions are always in control of switching on and off access to Gemini. So you are always in control of how much you want to share that within your education community. More on that later. NotebookLM. This is a wonderful research tool that allows educators to quickly synthesize and understand large volumes based on your own sources, right? So you might have a bunch of sources. You just want to focus on those sources. And NotebookLM is a wonderful tool for utilizing a much more kind of curated experience of generating resources from grounded sources that you decide on. And Dan is going to show us that a little bit later on as well. And that's also free to educators at the moment. Then we have a paid experience. Moving to the right-hand side, we have Gemini for Workspace, which is really bringing the power of generative AI into your favorite productivity suite. So bringing Gemini into Google Docs, bringing Gemini into Gmail and into Sheets and Slides, etc. So that's a real hyper streamlined effect, as you can imagine. If you're in Gmail, and you can quickly harness the power of Gemini to rewrite your email, for example, or look at a thread. Who's got those email threads with 30 plus responses, and quickly get a summary and then ask it to generate a response back. Those kinds of streamlined efficiencies are available within Gemini for Workspace, just as a couple of examples. Gemini Advanced is the advanced version of our chat experience, so more premium experience. And finally, NotebookLM Plus is just a more premium experience of NotebookLM that I just mentioned before. Allows greater sharing, allows you to add more features, more sources and a few other things. So just to give you like an overview of the offerings currently and how they sit, hopefully that helps. Again, I think worth calling out that Gemini and NotebookLM now offer as core services, which is really important, right? So if you're covered by an existing DPIA, you will have carried out for Google Workspace, you're covered as well to use these tools. And today you can turn on Gemini for all users. And NotebookLM will be coming to all users in coming months as well. So some exciting updates there. Another important point, when we think about student use of AI, Google does meet the DFE technology standards from 2023 and the brand new AI product safety expectations that came out this January 2025. So again, safe and compliant, generally speaking, but even from a local perspective, we're adhering to the local standards as well. So as an IT admin, you can switch it on for your schools right now, but it can also be legally switched on for any students as well. Again, you're in control of that decision. So let's talk about some of the experiences you gain from these tools, starting with, with the chat experience. So we all know that in the chat experience, it's information retrieval, you can brainstorm with the chat. I'm sure you're familiar with that, but there are a couple of other features within the Gemini app experience that are available. For example, deep research. So deep research is a feature that you can switch on in the chat, and it saves you hours of time as your personal AI research assistant. So if you want to really go deep on a topic, you could make, for example, here, the example on the screen is research on differentiated instruction and K-12 benefits. You can see that in the kind of studio, if you will, experience that you get here, deep research is researching 51 websites. So this is a little screenshot of it as it's happening in real time. You can even see the thinking or the approach that this tool is taking as it builds that research as well, and then comes out with a fully fledged detailed report. It will show you all the sources, and just really, really helpful when you want to go into topics from a deeper perspective. We also have Canvas that's available in the Gemini app. So this is more about like providing an interactive space for users to generate, iterate, refine documents, and work on code. So I like to think of it as more of a multimodal, interactive experience of the app. For example, I've seen examples of educators using Canvas to generate education video games or interactive solar system maps or an interactive table of elements. So things that can really help bring a learning concept to life. And really, really exciting kind of tool. And there's a lot to explore within that. And then a quick recap that our premium Gemini education licenses, I kind of mentioned before, give you that access to Gemini for Workspace. So across all these tools, you get the idea, right? Helping you write, helping you visualize, helping you plan, and the like across your productivity tools. I kind of covered this before a little bit. So which product fits where? Again, a quick recap, in the Gemini app, you can chat securely. We mentioned deep research before in Canvas, but also there are gems. Gems are, perhaps you've got repetitive tasks and you want to, instead of having to put a prompt in the app every single time, just trying to think of an example, perhaps it's about policies, right, at your education institution, and you want to create a repetitive flow that you can come back to and harness every time. So maybe you'll create your own gem about the policies within your education institution. So when you get questions, you can quickly ask that gem and basically retrieve the information without having to give it all the context. And I like to think about it like this: when you go to a chat experience, It's like introducing yourself to a friendly stranger. You have to shake hands and give it some context and tell it where you're from and tell it what you're interested in doing and what you're trying to achieve. Whereas a gem is like a friend for life. A really good friend knows your context and would come back to that good friend to just pick up right where you left off. So that's a bit of what's in the Gemini app. We've mentioned Gemini across the workspace apps, and Notebook we've kind of covered as well, paid and free offerings of that. A key differentiator, coming back to differentiators now for Google versus other products, is that Google owns the entire stack across software, models, devices, and cloud infrastructure. And why would you care about that? Why does that matter? I think the simple answer is it means that you're getting a seamlessly integrated AI experience that's not reliant on risky third-party solutions. So we're not reliant on partnering with a third-party solution that could potentially have issues or even security breaches or anything like that. We own every surface, so you can be confident when you're working with the Google AI products that things are nice and clear and simple and easy to use. And I think this last slide I'll mention here before I pass to Daniel to kind of demo some of the other offerings we discussed before is, I mentioned before, you can easily switch this on in the admin console. So Gemini does need to be turned on by an IT administrator in the admin console. It's off by default. So if there's something you're interested in, you can go into the admin console and switch it on for all ages, or you can switch it on at an organizational unit level as well. So perhaps you don't want to switch it on for everyone. Perhaps you want to switch it on, start with for teachers, for example. You have that control. So really, really simple. It doesn't have the administrative burden as well. It's very simple to switch on and get using. I think now is a good time, Daniel, to switch to maybe looking at the app a little bit before we go forward, maybe looking at the app and covering off some of the tools from your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. So when we're looking at the app, we've got obviously there's an experience that everyone can get, and there's obviously, as you can see in the top right-hand corner, I've got a pro experience. I do have a license, but there's a general experience. And so when we're thinking about prompting, we can insert our prompt into this box here at the bottom, but you can also see, as Simon was mentioning, the deep research and Canvas options as well. There are different models as well that you can use for doing your prompting, and so you can see some of these here. So different models will be better at different things. So you can see this one's better at reasoning, maths and code, whereas this one's more general all round. So when we're doing that, we can, again, I think prompting is one of those things we learn to do better over time, but there's so much you can do. And I think when we're actually rolling some of this out, we have to think about where we're actually connecting with people. And so sometimes it could be on a very personal level, because while we're talking about education, we can also realize that some of the things we're doing are very personal. And so I've got my own personal Gemini account for my Gmail account, and I'll ask different questions. The other day I was asking whether it's okay to eat ripe avocado or unripe avocados and things like that, or if I'm showing it some ingredients from the fridge, what can I do? I was asking it how to fix a fence post in my garden. There's so many applications that we can use, but within an education setting, again, there's so many. And I'll just show you some. Again, this was just one I was running this morning. There's a report that was 167 pages long. And so I uploaded it using the little plus icon here to upload a file, and then basically said, what do I need to know from this report? And it drew out some of the key findings from that report that I could then go through. And obviously you can see there are links into the report so that I could go and read that. Now, what I could then do is ask further follow-up questions, because I think one of the key things is how we build and how we reiterate in what we're doing. We mentioned the Canvas app. Now, I was at an event the other day and we were learning all about Canvas. And so I started, if I scroll to the top here, I was trying to build a software management. So again, I explained here, I'm a group of schools, this is what I wanted to do. I want to track all the software we're building, we're buying, we're in the contract dates are up, adding in GDPR, who it's used for, etc. And then I'll be honest, with quite a few kind of iterations and kind of back and forth, as you can see there, it came out with this system where I could then go and add software and have a system. Now, I'm not pretending this is the finished product. There's no database behind it, so this is kind of the front end of it. But we're thinking about how we can build applications, how we can build things in code. Now, I'm no good at code, so this is a great example of how you can kind of venture into something that previously would have taken probably days to have built this. Particularly if you're like me and don't know anything about coding, it would have taken a lot longer. But I was able to build something quite simply just by, and this was the key skill of knowing the right questions to ask, knowing how to communicate what I wanted to the AI. Kind of going down some other applications here as well. As I was doing this, I did ask it to create a logo for me. So I wanted a banner for my website that I was building, so it created the DB Software Manager for the website. Again, this was just all a bit of a mock-up. So the key here is just about asking questions, iterating. Now, obviously, you can feedback. You can ask it to confirm where it's got these different pieces of information from. So I think that's where we're seeing kind of in the app itself how we can use that. I'm going to go into GEMS a bit later, but before I go any further, I want to just also talk about the Gemini in Workspace. So the difference you will see if you do have a Pro account. So if I'm going into a Google Doc, you'll see this in Drive, in Slides, in Sheets, in Gmail as well. You'll see this little icon in the top right-hand corner, and I can open this up, and there's a side panel, and so I can ask questions. And one of the key differences between having the license and not having the license, besides having this embedded in your Workspace tools, is that it's not just training on generic data, it's training on your data. So when I'm asking this a question here, the difference if I'm doing it just in the app over here, in the app, it's generic web-based data. Whereas in the license here, it's actually going to be looking at the document I'm in here, but also what I've got on my Google Drive as well. So it's a more bespoke experience. When we are using it, I could ask it to help me write something. So this could be write a letter to a parent about something. So I can use it to help me write something. But then earlier on, I was using it. I'm going to discard that. Oh, let me bring this back up. And it was actually going to create a document. So if I show you, I actually went and said, I want a teacher training plan. And so it then just created this document for me, gave it a lovely banner heading. And then looking at, if I was teaching about introduction to AI, it's got the training objectives, the audience, and broken down some suggestions. And I think this is where we're realizing when we're using AI, it's great as a first draft. Now, this is not the finished product by any stretch of the imagination. There might be parts of this I want. When I first ran this, it gave me a session that lasted for 6 hours, which I think if you know in education, unless you're really blessed to be given a whole day to teach something, I was like, no, we need this in an hour. So it condensed it into an hour session, and you can see the results there. And as I say, this is just a first draft that I can work on. It will give me some ideas that I maybe hadn't thought about. It will give me a structure, and then I can go in and tinker with this and change it. Something else I was looking at, and you might not be too au fait with this at the moment, but is about Google Vids. Google Vids is Google's latest Google editing software, video editing software. But you get added functionality if you have one of the advanced licenses in there as well. So when I went in here, and I'll show you the finished products, it does take a little while to create. I went in to plan my story. And what I did here is using the @ symbol, I brought up a slideshow, which was my introduction to digital pedagogy, which is a project I'm working on. I click next, and then what it created for me, let me come out of that a sec. And it created this for me, this whole set of slides with audio as well. And it inserted placeholders, videos, I might want to use. Obviously, again, the idea is this is a draft. I go then and use it. Now, one of the additional things was I could click on this generate button over here, and I could generate a video. And what you can see at the moment, if I click here, VO2 is Google's standard video producing software, but the VO3 was adding audio. So I created this prompt, create a friendly video with a friendly robot saying, welcome to this introduction. And again, I gave it context, because context is really important when we're doing our prompts, because what we don't necessarily want is a US classroom or US language or things like that. So we're always sharing our context. And I'm going to click play and just show you the first couple of slides about this and what it's doing. So let me click play. The second slide is the video that was created using VO3. I'm going to stop there because obviously at this point you realize that is not Daniel Ball speaking. Now, one of the great things in Vids, you can go in and do your own overview audio, and I can even change the voice that's saying. But the reality is all of this was created just from my presentation that I uploaded. And then the only thing I've added since then is that video. So again, this took about a minute to create the video once I clicked the create button. So I think this is some great examples of how we can start using it. And I think the reality is within our trust, we are using it in so many different ways. We're using it in central teams to create training and develop and training plans, to create resources. We're using it for report writing to help develop policies, and that's to maybe start something from scratch, or it's to review existing policies. It might be that you have two policies and you want them to compare on contrast. We're looking at summarizing large text, like I showed earlier, where you've got a very long PDF, or maybe I know someone was using it to, they'd written a report themselves, but they wanted the executive summary, and so just use AI to create that. They're improving the readability of what they're doing. There's a function on Google, where is it here? It's called a little button here. It's called proofread this document. So it just polishes it a little bit, improves it as well. I've used it for emails, and people who do that to summarize emails, to write emails. I know I was writing an email where I was really conscious about getting the tone right. I'll be honest, I was a little frustrated at the time, and I didn't want that to come through in what I was writing. And so I used AI to kind of help me with the tone of an email. In Google Sheets, you've got things like formulas, and I found that really useful in helping with creating formulas as well. But again, there's no end of these kind of opportunities. I think one of the key things is these are developing all the time, and we're learning all the time. And I think the challenge is looking at what you're trying to do and then seeing how the AI tool can help you. And it might be that today it isn't as good as you need it to be, and that's across the board with all AI tools, but they're developing so fast. And I know Simon mentioned this about the rate of change. It's so fast that we need to be aware that the version of AI we're using today is the worst version of AI we'll have, and it will improve so dramatically quite quickly. And if you want to look at that, do encourage you to Google Will Smith eating spaghetti, and you'll be able to see how video has improved over time from quite a laughable video just a few months ago to something that might be harder to even know if it's real or not that you're creating today. But I'm going to hand back, I think, to Simon following those demos. We've got a bit more later as well.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. So interesting to see your use cases and how you're using it. And I think that's what's really fascinating. We create these tools, but it's really about how, how educators are using them. And I know there's some questions already, like about, how are they used for school leaders? And I think you've answered some of that, but I think one of the largest points is really is what you made, Daniel. It's like it's more about like what do you need to do, in your position or your role. Like what are those key things that you need that if you can wave a magic wand could really save you a lot of time and really help you out. And then from there, kind of figure out how the tools can support what it is you're trying to achieve. I think that's a really good point. We do have lots of resources, right? We're going to share later on.
Yeah. I was going to say one of the things as well, often people don't know where to start. And I think a good place to start is asking Gemini where to start. Because sometimes we don't know. We don't and you can say, this is my role. How can I use AI to improve my role? And it will give you a stream of solutions or options at least, just to get you going. And I think the other side of it is I just think, what is that thing I would want to delegate to someone else? And look at that and think, okay, how can I automate that? How can I, again, you're still going to be working in it, but you can streamline that process a lot more by using AI.
Yeah, great points. Thanks, Daniel. I think you've got some important slides here on prompting, right?
Yeah, so this was really just, again, reminding us about the power of the prompt and why it's so important. Because if we were to ask a question, right, the first line of a fairy tale, I think we'd all know that what it's going to say is, and you have to click the button for this, once upon a time. There you go, it's going to come. And so the top bit is our prompt, and then the second part is our output. And I think the key that we're always thinking about is quality in, quality out. Because if our prompt is poor, then what we're going to get from it is poor. And so it's all about over time learning how to develop that. And we might start being very poor, but the more you use AI, the more you're going to learn. I don't know if you want to go on to the next slide. Yeah, and I think this is the key about using natural language, being clear about what we want. And again, this is a skill that we're learning more and more, because if you literally just type in, as it shows there, lesson plan, it will give you something, but it's going to be very generic. The more context we can give it, the more information we can give it. But it does an excellent job at kind of deciphering what we might mean by certain things. So I think it's also not worrying about mistakes, not worrying about getting it all right first time, because the reality as well, it will give us something. And that's what I was saying earlier, we can iterate by going back and saying, no, I didn't want that, I wanted this. And the good thing is it's different to a person, because if someone else goes away and then spends an hour producing something and you say, no, that's not what I wanted, then that's another hour wasted of their time. But with the AI, literally it's seconds that we're using here. And so, yeah, it's really important to use those things and using this. So there is a question about what's the average number of words in the most successful Gen AI prompt. If you do want to put your number in the chat, if you want to have a guess, you can do so. Because again, we don't want to be too short, and maybe sometimes, again, we don't want to be too long, but giving it the right amount of information. And the answer is, drum roll please. The answer is, and Sophie has hit it on the head, 21. So a good number. So again, we want to put enough context in. Now, again, we'll go into gems as well, how gems can really help this in a little bit. Do you want to go on? So, yeah. So again, we're trying to get the right balance, and just a reminder that these are all the different ways we can use generative AI. So I think the only thing that really stops us is our imagination. So I encourage you, if you're new to this, it's just kind of, there is a bit of a jump in the deep end and move on with it and get going.
Thanks, Daniel. I'm going to jump in and introduce, since we've done some demoing, just the more personalized learning with NotebookLM and Gems. But I'm going to be really quick about this because of time, so we can get to some of the demoing of that Daniel can show us. So I suppose it's just important to mention that, like we can cater to diverse students' needs, and that's important for student success. And when we think about greater inclusion as well, excuse me, in education communities, I think some of these tools, the personalized learning approach, like the real-time interactions, assessments and feedback, it really helps us do that. And it really helps us make learning materials a lot more accessible to students, particularly if we think about like natural language processing and speech recognition. Really interesting advances in these tools that are helping. And I'm just going to jump right ahead to Notebook LM. We kind of touched on this before. This AI personalized research companion grounded in your own documents. We will also talk about GEMS. We've already mentioned it a little bit, but I think it's these two tools I just want you to have the chance to kind of see how they're used, see how they're being used to kind of really save time basically in the classroom and outside of it from an administrative perspective. And on GEMS, because I already touched on it earlier, I will also mention that we are, as well as having like pre-built GEMS, Daniel will be able to show you, you can also build your own GEMS, your own very bespoke GEMS in the tool. But a good example of a pre-built GEM is Learning Coach. The reason I'm mentioning Learning Coach is because it's powered by LearnLM. So remember we talked before about how we're thinking about building for AI with pedagogical inputs, with the science of learning infused within the tools. It's Learning Coach's GEM is a great example of that. So without going any further, I think back to you, Daniel. Do you want to show us some of those tools?
Sure, let's go for it. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because since I've been using all these different tools, there is a part of me that's just trying to get my head around it, to be like, well, when do I use Notebook LM, and when do I use Gemini, and when do I use GEMS, and when do I use? And I think the two, I think I've come up with an answer. It might develop over time, but I think the two key things we're looking at is a phrase that Simon just used, which is grounded, which means what is the data it's trained in. And so when we're looking at Gemini, the app, that's trained on the wide variety of whatever's on the internet, based in a very general way. When we're looking at Notebook LM, it's training on the specific data that you have given it to train on. In the same way that when we're thinking about the Google Gemini in Workspace, it's training on your data as well. So we're always thinking about what is the data that it's giving me a response from. And then the other thing is context, because it's about what do we want it to, how do we want it to answer us, in what context? And that's where, for example, GEMS, which I'll go into a second, is very important. So the two things are what it's grounded in and what's the context. And I think that helps us understand this quite a bit better. So in Notebook LM, we can create a new notebook. And in here, we can upload a number of different sources. So we can do files, we can do Google Drive, links, YouTube videos, and copied text. Now, if you've got the free version of Notebook LM, you can add up to 50 sources. If you've got the paid version, you can do up to 300. I don't know if I've even got 50 sources on one topic at the moment. I'm sure if you're doing a big research report, maybe you would. But if we're uploading a file, so I'm going to pick up something here. Here was the, I'm just going to do the document that I was looking at this morning. There was a 167-page report. It's going to upload that. Now, I can do multiple documents. And then once it's uploaded, it'll give me a little summary. Give it a second. And then I can begin asking questions. As you can see just here at the moment, it already says that. Oh, there we go. This was the EU generative AI policies. So I can ask questions, and it does give you some suggested questions down the bottom. And I can click on that, and it's going to give me an answer to that in 1 second. And again, one of the great things like this is it's purely trained on this PDF only. It's not drawing in any additional information. So if I asked it, well, how does this compare to something else? It wouldn't be able to answer me that because it doesn't have the something else unless I uploaded that as well. But what you can see as well is that all these links. So if I'm reading it, I think, well, where did it say that? I can click on that and it would take me to the part in the PDF that it's referring to. What we can see as well, it also does audio overviews and mind maps. Now, if I click here, generate for the deep dive conversation, it's going to create a podcast of 2 hosts. At the moment, it's 2 American hosts. I believe at some point more languages will be coming and more variation on that. But at the moment, it's 2 American hosts who are going to talk about the document. Now, I'll just bring up an example of this. So there was a white paper on bridging the 44 million teacher gap. So I created this podcast. I'm going to click play. As you can see, it's 12 minutes long. The length will vary on the length of the document. Okay, so it's going to talk about this. Now, one of the great features you've got here is interactive mode, which is still in beta. But I can go on here.
Just to interrupt really quickly, Daniel. I just quickly, sorry to do this to you, but I noticed that there seems to be an audio issue. It's not with the tools. I think it's through the platform we're using. So we are thinking back to the last example we used with the robot as well. I think we missed the audio a little bit. I know that it's actually working, and I know the podcast works. So we can share, perhaps we can share some examples later on in our resources that we send back to all the viewers. So I'll just make that mention.
I do appreciate that, rather than me going on with these great examples, but they are great. So they're doing a podcast together, but what you can actually then do is I could go in and ask a specific question. So if I said, I know my job's a lot about digital, so I said I could ask, well, how is the use of technology impacting the teacher gap? And so then the podcast would deviate and focus on my question. So this is a great way that people are using to break down kind of, again, rather than reading through, I'd rather listen to something. And a lot of teachers are using this already with students. It will be very interesting when this comes available to students as well, and how they will be able to use it to support their learning. But going back into my notebooks, just gives some examples of some of the stuff I've done. So here is an example of building an effective AI strategy. I've got lots of different documents that I compiled, and then I was able to go in and just ask questions about, well, what do I do about this? What's the answer on this? So different things. Another really good example is an Academy IDSR Ofsted risk checker. So we had some different performance reports. We got the school inspection handbook. So basically putting in our internal reports into this, and then able to go and ask questions about how well are we doing about this? How can we improve that? Now, again, it's not always going to know how to improve unless you've got the data on how to improve it. So looking at that. So some really great options. As I was saying, the sort of thing you'd use NotebookLM for, it might be a 1-document report. So again, this was a very long report on PedTech. And so then I could just go in and ask questions about PedTech, or it might be a compilation of research that I can go and ask questions across the board. Now, when we're thinking about GEMS, so GEMS is this area back in the Gemini app, and you can see here it says Explore GEMS. So if I click on here, there's going to be some pre-made GEMS by Google. There's a learning coach, career guide. And this is what I was saying about context. The way that helped me really understand GEMS better is if you've done prompting before, when you've gone in and, like I will say, I am a learning technologist working in the UK for a group of 33 schools. And basically I give this whole spiel to teach it who I am or what I want. And so what the GEM is doing that is doing that in one go and then reusing that over and over again. I hope that makes sense. So it might be to say, I'm a head teacher working in a UK secondary school in Birmingham, and creating that context. And then so when you create the GEM, let me show you this here. So you put the title, you put all these instructions in that I've been describing. And so it means that you don't have to then put that in every time that you're doing this. It will just do it the first time. You can also upload files into this if that's helpful. So a really, I know Simon mentioned about the learning coach. Now, one of the things I kind of adapted, very basic, my own one, which was my tutor. And I created this. Let me just zoom out a little bit so you can see that. And I specified in this that you're an academic tutor for GCSE research, but I also specified I don't want you to give me the answers, because sometimes when you put it into, if you just ask Gemini generally, it will just give you the answer. And I was like, I don't want you to give me the answer. I want you to help me work through the questions. Now, this was very basic, and you can build this out. You could be more subject specific. As I was saying, you could upload exam specs, etc., onto that, or other knowledge organizers, etc., as a way of helping that. So this is a different way of using it, but as I was saying, it's so that then you've got that ready, so you don't have to go and repeat that every time to otherwise it's going to be very time consuming. So hopefully that gives you the idea of what a gem is, a notebook, and how you might use them differently as well. Back to you, Simon.
Brilliant. Thank you, Daniel. I realized, like, I'm looking at the time. Thanks so much for showing us how you use those tools, by the way. It's great. It's really, really good. And if you're wondering about the audio podcast, feel free just to go and log into Notebook LM yourself, and generate a notebook and try it yourself. It's really easy. It's a lot of fun. It's also available in many language outputs as well. So from a inclusive perspective, extremely useful for multicultural and for the world we live in, right? The global world, whether it's sharing content just more effectively for people with English as a second language, or even beyond. Extremely useful. You don't even have to translate the original sources. You can just switch on which language you want the output to come in, and it will translate automatically. So really, really useful. I just want to share this very quickly, just another note about how we're thinking about being bold and responsible about how we're thinking about this technology. We do have a different experience for younger learners when they use Gemini. So we've worked with education institutions to create guardrails, right, to make sure that younger learners are also staying really safe. So under 18 learners are having a different experience to using Gemini. So, for example, there's learner-specific Gemini onboarding. So when a younger learner first uses Gemini, they'll get an AI literacy video to kind of help them think about how to use Gemini. There's also a double check response feature that runs automatically. So as an adult, you can use that feature, that it will run automatically for the first time a user asks a fact-based question, which is really important. And it's been assessed by associations, and Gemini has been determined low risk compared to other offerings out there. So basically a high rating when it comes to safety in using this. So that was all of the content. We had a few questions. I think there was a question about the difference between gems and agents. I think high level, like gems are it's a different approach really in terms of how they're built. So gems are pre-built, customizable AI experts. They can be used within a larger AI platform like Gemini. They're a little bit more specific, a little bit more, let's say, guardrailed into the functionality, while agents, traditionally speaking, are more versatile, autonomous entities, and you can maybe do a little bit more with them. They can interact with other agents, for example, connect with other tools. We actually offer at Google other tools like Vertex AI, a little bit more additional kind of bespoke offerings where you can deploy more complex AI agent software. And you can also stay tuned, right, for more agentic offerings in education as well, like teaser there. So yeah, stay tuned to everything that we'll be bringing soon to this space. I'm wondering if there was another question. I think Daniel, was there one for you?
There was one just about rolling out strategy. I have posted a chat in the chat just to answer that as well. But I think the question was, where do we start as well? And I think the key starting point is about start with your need. What is the problem you're trying to solve? Because there are many tools out there that might be great, but they're not what you need in terms of solving your problems. What are your goals at the moment? and then do the research to find out what's going to help you with that. That would be a great starting place.
Brilliant.
Wow.
Well, big thank you. And I'll just pass back to Jonathan. Thanks everyone, and thank you, Head Teacher Chat, and thanks everyone for being here, and Daniel, of course, and the wonderful Canopy team.
Thanks everyone.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, that was such an insightful hour, and so I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, I did a bit of the sort of like a brief outline of what you're doing. I mean, I like the compliance, and the key thing for school leaders is actually what Google does. It doesn't share its information with anyone else, and actually that's quite important for school leaders to know that one. And they haven't got, what is it, an AI tech stack somewhere else. It is Google's one, and they're using all that information. I love what Daniel was talking about, different approaches to Notebook LM, and actually you can put information into that. I personally, sometimes when the government brings out a new document, I pull it into a notebook, I turn it into a podcast, I listen to it on my runs in the morning, and I just sort of like get that summary of what's going on, and it's just so helpful. And the gems are, I think, is a sort of game changer. And there's one question in the chat was, are you able to share it with your SLT team? Because if you develop this gem that has all your safeguarding policies or something in, and you put a chat in it and said, oh, the deputy head was saying, oh, can I ask a question about a particular scenario? What should I approach to it? Could that be a school-wide approach? Could they do that? Would that work in a shared?
I think for me, isn't it, Jonathan? Is that a question for me?
That's
I would say stay tuned.
It's basically
Stay tuned.
so if you put all your safeguarding policies and the team can then ask questions about the safeguarding policy to help answer questions.
Well, obviously you could do it as a Notebook LM as well. But as Simon said, stay tuned.
Okay. So, and yeah,
I mean, it's a very good point on Notebook LM. But sorry, just to jump in, Jonathan. But yeah, Daniel makes a great point on Notebook LM. Notebook LM Plus has great sharing capabilities. That was a big question we got asked a lot. Was like, for example, what if you built like a course or course repository of information within Notebook LM? A lot of our customers are doing that. It's only as useful if I can share it out in my community. So there are sharing experiences within Notebook LM where you can just share the chat, for example. So you as a teacher or as a head teacher could coordinate the sources and what you want that notebook to be all about, but you could share the chat experience without sharing the sources. Just an example of shareability. But yes, more sharing is certainly like we hear the feedback. So yeah, excited about the future.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for everyone listening. Thank you for Canopy to setting this all up. And yeah, I'm looking forward to how it all develops and things. Just to let all our listeners know, in late August, we're doing a pre-inset day in training to get everyone ready for the inset day. So basically, we're doing a KITSI update. We're doing all sorts of things. So maybe you might want to come and join us on that day. We've got 2 half days of lots of information for all school leaders to know before the school year. It's proving quite popular at the moment. We only launched it last Friday and we got about 100 people signed up already. So we're looking forward to that, and enjoy the rest of your day. So thank you, Daniel and Simon, again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.